evening, everyone. I would like to call this council meeting of August the 2nd, 2022 to order. And I apologize to those who have come out and are in the audience this evening. It's just great to see you all. I'm very sorry that we're starting late. However, there are sometimes things that happen that we don't have any control over. I will request now that we stand for the national anthem. Thank you.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command.
Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits.
God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Please be seated. Before we begin, I would like to read a safety notice. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate council chambers to the nearest exit, which is here, through the chamber doors, and obey all instructions given if assistance is required. Madam Clerk, Julie Kirkelos is here this evening, and she will be the point person. Once you have evacuated the building, please gather in the front parking lot outside of Town Hall. I would like to remind everyone to place your cell phones on silent or turn your phone off altogether. And lastly, the Town of Lincoln Council meetings are posted on our YouTube channel. Niagara Region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Attawandaronk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Town of Lincoln and the Regional Municipality of Niagara stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. All members of council are in attendance, both in person and remotely. We also have senior staff available remotely to speak to their area of expertise. Also in attendance, we have representatives from Community Care of West Niagara, ICOM Engineering Company, as well. Regional Councillor Foster is joining us with his monthly report. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Reimer has declared a conflict with items 16.3, 16.4, 16.5, and 16.6. Councillor Reimer, do you have any comments to make?
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Yes, I'll be declaring interest on the bylaws 2022-54, 55, 56, and 57. In each case, the applicant is a customer of the company I work for.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And I see Councillor Njima has declared a conflict within the closed session on item 15.1. Councillor Regina, your comments?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, just as you've said, I'm declaring a conflict on one of the items to be discussed in closed session because my employer has a pecuniary interest.
Thank you. Do members have any announcements? You have a limit of 3 items. Seeing none, we'll move on to proclamations. And this evening, we have one proclamation. And joining us to receive the reading is Elizabeth Klassen, the President of Community Care of West Niagara, and Dave Thompson, Director of the Community Care of West Niagara Board. I'll read the proclamation, and then I'll make the presentation, and then I believe at that time one or both members will make comments. Whereas the Town of Lincoln recognizes that Community Care of West Niagara's CCWN has served vulnerable individuals and families of our community with compassion, integrity, and respect for 55 years. Whereas the Town of Lincoln acknowledges CCWN's dedication to growing our community beyond hunger. And whereas the Town of Lincoln support CCWN's mission to providing essential service and support to residents of Lincoln facing economic hardships, fostering a connected community where balance is restored, and individuals are presented with opportunities to rebuild their life's foundation. Whereas the Town of Lincoln support the continued partnership with CCWN as responsible stewards and safeguards of our community. Now therefore, I, Sandra Easton, Mayor of the Town of Lincoln, do hereby proclaim September 9th, 2022 as Community Care of West Niagara CCWN Day. And I noticed this evening that there's a new flag that is just resting itself on, yes, that's great. Thank you very much, Linda. So I'm going to make this presentation, and before that I do that, I want to acknowledge all the members of the boards and the board and friends of the Community Care of West Niagara and staff who are here this evening to take part in this very important, I think, and most rewarding presentation. Having read the proclamation, I'd like to present it to President Elizabeth Klassen. Congratulations, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
And on behalf of council, we make this proclamation
Thank you so much.
to recognize your association. Thank
Awesome.
you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, councilors, staff, and residents of Lincoln. I want to thank you for accepting our request for a delegation to the Town of Lincoln and for the proclamation. My name's Elizabeth Klassen, and I'm the president of the Board of Directors of CCWN. For the last 55 years, Community Care of West Niagara has been a crucial agent for our delightful community. Its effectiveness is evident and is well respected by stakeholders, community partners throughout Lincoln and Niagara. Its positive impact has been well chronicled. Countless testimonials received from its clients over the year and in its strong bridging with kindred organization both nationally and in our neighboring communities. The Town of Lincoln's community vision speaks of our town as a place to grow and a place to prosper, a place to belong. Similarly, our mandate, as articulated in our recently completed and ambitious strategic plan, sets out the objectives and actions that will help us achieve our vision and continue our 55-year-old contribution to positively shaping our community. CCWN's mandate likewise supports the various declared town pillars, and particularly, as expressed in our values and guiding principles, the idea of maintaining a vibrant and resilient community. Our mission speaks to providing essential service and support to Lincoln residents who are facing economic hardship. Our goal is to bridge our clients as they strive for balance and for self-sufficiency. We highly value our affiliation with the Town of Lincoln, with whom we share the privilege and weighty accountability of being responsible stewards of our community's resources and precious confidence. As members of CCWN Board of Directors, we have not only a fiduciary responsibility for open and transparent governance, but also we are deeply committed to embracing and further change with integrity. I would like to highlight that we are both the sole Lincoln Direct member of Lincoln Direct Member Food Bank recognized by Feed Ontario, which maintains that there are very stringent processes that need to be adhered to in maintaining the cold chain, etc. CCWN is not willing to compromise client confidence regarding quality assurance. As the only affiliate member food bank in Lincoln and recognized by Food Banks Canada, CCWN takes our ethical food banking code very seriously, and we're always seeking opportunities for continuous improvement. As a direct member of Feed Ontario, we've come together as a foundational member of Feed Niagara, consisting of the direct member food banks of Feed Ontario through Niagara. And as this evolves, we will continue to provide updates as this mission of the group develops. On September 9th, 2022, CCWN will officially commemorate 55 years of serving the Lincoln community. To honor and recognize this special anniversary, we request the town of Lincoln join CCWN in this special day and raise the CCWN flag. We want to thank you for supporting the CCWN Day and flag, which will be on this special day. Our official grand reopening will be held on September the 9th, and we're glad to have your commitment to celebrate with us, and we hope you'll join us. And David would like to speak as well.
Thank you very much, Madam President.
Good evening, Mayor, Your Worship, councilors, staff, and Town of Lincoln residents. My name is Dave Thompson. I'm a member of the Board of Directors for CCWN. Thanks to Elizabeth for sharing some of the history, information, and exciting new affiliations of which CCWN is an integral part. We wish to thank the board members and staff who are here this evening representing our organization for this special event. They dedicate their time and efforts to this important organization. It's greatly appreciated. Pardon me. We're pleased to have you been invited to join you this evening on such a happy occasion. It's a time to acknowledge and celebrate a milestone in community service, an undertaking that was once a single resident's vision that's grown into an organization today that highlights residents' generosity, dedication to community service, volunteerism, and compassion for those facing economic hardship in our town. Elizabeth and I were in front of you not that long ago talking about what CCWN does day to day, how we operate, our governance, as well as our future cooperative opportunities. As an update to that visit, with regards to the opportunities, our team has been preparing to participate in conversations with CAO Mike Kirkopoulos and town staff as we move forward to creating a framework for the Lincoln Nonprofit Organizations Roundtable. I must say that we're very excited by the support and encouragement shown by this council during our last visit, and we're anxious to get this work underway. We're committed to follow through with this process, and we can't wait to see the possibilities that'll be created and what important impacts and benefits these community conversations will yield. We truly appreciate the council and the citizens being an integral part of our celebration of CCWN's 55 years in Lincoln. It's not just a celebration of where we began and where we are today, but it's about the excitement surrounding the vision of what is yet to be realized for CCWN and the town of Lincoln. Thank you very much for your time.
We'll be anticipating your announcements as September 9th comes along. And thank you very much for coming out this evening. Things have certainly come a long way. I'm sure Doreen Hutchinson would just be delighted to know that things have gone from her front yard to something as sophisticated as what you're working with absolutely every day. And congratulations to the board as well. It's excellent. Thank you all very much. We'll move on now to recognition and achievements. We have none this evening. Item number 9 is a motion to approve the previous council minutes. And now we're now considering item 9.1, the council minutes of July the 11th, 2022. Do members of council have any question? There being none, I have a motion moved by Councillor Mikulik and seconded by Councillor Timmers. The council approved the minutes of the following meetings of council, special council minutes of July the 11th, 2022. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
The vote is now open. Councillor Pachariva, may I have your vote verbally, please?
Yes, you may, Julie. I say yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Reimer?
Yes.
And
Oh, there it is finally now.
closing the vote. And that carries. Thank you.
The motion has carried. We now move on to item 10, delegations and presentations. And we have one presentation this evening. Our presentation is from Jeremy Parsons, a cultural heritage planner from ICOM, regarding an introductory overview of the downtown Beamsville Heritage Conservation District study. And I'm looking to see where Jeremy is. Hello, Jeremy. Thank you very much for joining us. And you go ahead. You have an audience here this evening besides the council members. So now I've lost you. Okay, there you are. All right, Jeremy. Thank you very much. And your study notes are up on the board. Thank you. Go ahead.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And good evening, members of council. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Jeremy Parsons. I'm a cultural heritage planner with ACOM Canada. And I'm excited to bring you an update on our Heritage Conservation District study. We've started the study beginning in April of this year, and we've been working together with your wonderful planning staff to get the project off the ground. So I hope you've had a chance to have a quick look at the introductory project memo that's included as part of the agenda. One thing to note, just to note, is some of the dates in that memo have been changed, or are, I guess maybe it's more proper to say, are changing as we discuss things and learn more with staff. So just take note of that, and I'll do my best to kind of get those dates as close as we can to what's accurate in my presentation today. So next slide, please. So in this presentation, I'll introduce you to the study. We'll discuss heritage property status in Ontario, just a little bit of an introduction or an overview. I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with that. We'll look at districts in Ontario. We'll look at the legislation that enables districts, and we'll look at the Part 5 designation process. We'll also go over the methodology and approach that ACOM is using for this study. We'll take a look at the study boundaries, which are morphing and changing, but what we're working with to start. And we'll look at settlement patterns in Beamsville as well. And finally, we'll go over our project schedule. We'll talk about our meetings, and we'll talk about consultation, and we'll leave some time at the end for some questions and discussion as well. Next slide, please. So this chart just illustrates our project team from ACOM. We have three major groups that are contributing to this project. The first is the Cultural Heritage Group, which is our heritage specialists and heritage researchers. The second is our engagement group, which is professionals in urban design, landscape architecture, planning, and public engagement. And finally, we have a support group, which includes project managers, our GIS team, and graphic designer as well. And all three of these groups are headed by Tara Jenkins and by myself, who's the point of contact for the town. Next slide, please. So just a bit of an overview. This schematic kind of gives you an understanding of heritage property status in Ontario. And it's best simplified sort of under three strata or three layers. So the first layer is surveyed or inventoried properties. These properties are often identified through high-level desktop reviews. They don't have any legal status or protections. But in some cases, they do have status in secondary plans or official plans, such as in Oakville and in Hamilton. And so these properties are sort of not a lot of detail on them, but they've been identified in some respect as being potential heritage properties. The second layer is listed or registered properties. And in Lincoln, there's about 212 of these listed properties. So these properties have been screened with minimal detail. They're not designated under the Ontario Heritage Act, but they are afforded some protection under the Act. And there's a 60-day hold on any intent to demolish a structure on these properties. And they're part of an official register, which includes both listed and designated properties. So the final layer is designated properties. So these properties can be protected either under Part 4, which is individual properties, individual parcels, or Part 5, which is heritage conservation districts, which is what we're talking about today. These properties are generally fairly thoroughly evaluated. They use provincial criteria as part of that evaluation, and they're protected under municipal bylaw. So if there's changes that are proposed to these properties, they have to go through a specific heritage permit process. Next slide, please. So what is a heritage conservation district or an HCD? Well, it's a defined area of unique character that has value because of its interrelated elements. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts, meaning it's the collective value that this area contributes to or points to. That's what makes up the significance of an HCD, not a particular building or a few particular buildings, but the contributory factor of multiple buildings to form a unique character. So these areas often include neighborhoods, and most HCDs across Ontario are residential districts. But if you look across the province, there's lots of examples of industrial districts or districts that have multiple land uses. Some of them have commercial residential, industrial residential, different components that kind of all play into a unique area. And as I mentioned, these properties are protected under Part 5. Next slide, please. So just quickly, this legislation that we're talking about, the Ontario Heritage Act, in Section 40 of the Act, it outlines 4 areas of focus that a study must include. So this is what we're working on now. So these 4 areas of focus include examining the character and appearance of an area, including buildings, structures, and other features. Examining and making recommendations on the boundaries of an area, so that specific geography. The third point is considering and making recommendations as to the objectives of designation and the contents of a future district plan. And finally, the fourth component is the study should make recommendations as to any changes that will be required to the official plan, the zoning bylaw, or any other municipal bylaws. So those are the 4 components that are kind of our guiding star as we go through this study. Next slide, please. So this is a quick outline of the designation process, the 4 steps. The first is council direction. We've already passed that steps. Council's given direction to initiate this study, and the Heritage Committee has been consulted. Step 2, which is where we are, is beginning the Hcd study. So this includes consultation with the public, consultation with the Heritage Committee, and finally consultation with council as we provide our study findings and recommendations. Once the study findings and recommendations are put forward to council in the form of a study report, council then has the opportunity to decide if it wants to go ahead with the designation. So following the completion of an HCD study, council is given the opportunity to decide to move ahead. And if it moves ahead, the next step is the Hcd Planning Guidelines. So that's another, I would say, a minimum six-month process that involves consultation with the public, with the Heritage Committee. There's specific criteria outlined in the Act as well for a plan. And once the plan is finally completed, then council would be in place to actually designate the district and to pass a bylaw and to issue a notice. Now, of course, appeals can take place, and they would take place if they are to take place at this step. So that's another thing to consider. But provided no appeals are made, the district could be designated and the heritage permit process could be installed, whereby changes to the district would be reviewed by your staff, by your heritage committee, and those changes would be regulated by the town. Next slide, please. So this is our approach to the study. We've basically outlined this in a little more detail in the memo, but this gives you a sense of the 8 steps that are sort of involved in this study that we're undertaking. The first is the project launch and initiation. So we've had our launch meetings with staff. We've produced a communications and engagement strategy. We've created a work plan, and we've started our review of the background materials. We've also begun the background research and data collection, compiling as much historical information as we can, working with the library and the archives and local museums to pull information and records as well. And introductory meetings is the third step. So this forms part of that step. We've also met with the Municipal Heritage Committee earlier in July, and they provided some wonderful feedback that we've taken to integrating into our study. The fourth step is public consultation, the in-house PIC, and that's a really important part of the HCD study. So we're really eager and we're interested to get as much engagement and feedback from the public as we can. The fifth step is the HCD brief. This is sort of meant to be kind of an interim update for the town to say somewhere around halfway, here's where we are. Here's the information we've received from the public. Here's where we're at with our proposed boundary of the district that we're looking at, and kind of get a sense from the town if the town feels comfortable with that direction, or if a change of course is due. So that's kind of an interim update. The sixth point is the Cultural Heritage Evaluation Policy Review and Analysis. And this is really a key component of the study. This is sort of the meat and potatoes in terms of doing the analysis, in terms of the built heritage resources that are in the study area, and providing a good policy review and analysis as well. And the final 2 steps are the Hcd Study Report, which will be submitted to staff, to the Heritage Committee, and to Council for review, and the recommendations and value added measures as well. That's step 8. Next slide, please. So this is a good visual, and I'm sure most of you have seen this in the memo. This is sort of what we're starting with. This is our very high-level study area boundaries. Now, these are subject to change, so I have to preface it with that. We've had some discussions both with the committee and with staff that where additional changes have been recommended, and we're looking at integrating those into this study area. We haven't yet been able to update all of our mapping to reflect that, but you can see kind of the general outline is fairly similar, and what you see here is generally the outline that we're putting forward to start. So it's a corridor study. It's focused specifically on King Street, going from east to west, from Lincoln Avenue on the west all the way over to College Street on the east. There's multiple extensions from that corridor on King Street, but that's kind of the spine which runs parallel within downtown Beamsville. On this map, you can see a list of all the registered properties in yellow. All the purple properties are designated properties, so those are protected under Part 4, and the boundary itself is of course outlined in red. So next slide, please. So these are the, this is a map from 1876, the Illustrated Historical Atlas, showing downtown Beamsville, and a fire insurance plan from 1928. And the reason I put these up is because when we determined what we thought of putting forward for the proposed study area, we really wanted to look at what you had in terms of historical documentation, and mapping was a key tool that we used, and it is a key tool. So we really wanted to sort of border or frame the study area based on the historic fabric that we could determine in a lot of these historical maps. So, obviously in the 1876 map, you have much of a smaller village, more compact, kind of centered more on Ontario Street and Mountain Street. And then even by 1928, it starts to enlarge a bit. You have not only residential and commercial, but even some industrial properties off King Street. So it's growing. And so we wanted to kind of incorporate that and do our best to include as much as possible, but without including too much non-contributory modern buildings that didn't really fit with this evolution of the study area. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick overview of some of the meetings that we have scheduled. Of course, the Heritage Committee we met with in July, and we're meeting with yourselves now. The Public Information Center open house is, we've had a very tentative indication that September may be a good target, September the 14th. So again, that's tentative, I understand, but we wanted to kind of flag it for council and for discussion as well. And then going into 2023, we have a number of meetings with town staff that are intended to be update meetings on the project. And then of course, final deliverables for council with that Hcd study report. Next slide, please. And finally, one of the real key pieces to this study is engaging the public. We think that getting as much good quality information as we can from local residents is really key to determining where this district ought to go, which properties ought to be considered for inclusion, and maybe which properties ought to be considered for to be left out. So there's three basic components to our engagement that we want to highlight. The first is our Speak Up Lincoln website, which I think is a wonderful interactive tool that the town has, and just a great place to start. So we're working with town staff right now to try to get that up and running, get it live soon, and hopefully get residents engaged in that through that website. We want to include some interactive mapping that'll be linked through Speak Up Lincoln as well. And Grimsby has a wonderful example of this consultation tool that's using ArcGIS. People can actually click on the web application and provide comments that are specific to properties. So if you know of a particular house or church or commercial building, you can click on it and you can put your comments that are specifically geolocated or pinpointed on that property. So that's helpful for us, because sometimes when you receive comments from the public, sometimes you get the odd comment that is it's speaking about a property, but there's no address, or maybe the address is off, kind of throws you on a wild goose chase. So it's nice to have that tool. And the Speak Up Lincoln site, we're intending for it to have a survey as well. So the public can click on a survey and provide some information that way. And then the final component, which I've already mentioned, is the open house, which is an in-person format. So we can really engage with people and have longer discussions, have more detailed discussions on the area and what they'd like to see. Next slide, please. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me. Happy to take any questions and look forward to listening in on the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parsons. And members of council will open up for questions. Just give me a moment. I need to make some adjustments with my papers here. have Counselor Timmers. Go ahead, Counselor Timmers.
Thank you very much, Mary Easton. Through you to our presenter, Mr. Parsons, thank you very much for being here tonight. Nice to see you again and to go over this, have the opportunity to look at this report. I just wanted to make some comments around the registry. And as we move through this process, I know there's a lot of properties that perhaps have not been included in the registry at this point. Not because there's not cultural or heritage value there, it's just perhaps they haven't been identified. So I guess my question through to you, as we work through this process, will there be some recommendations for properties that perhaps we could add to the registry?
Mr. Parsons?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair, to Councillor Timmers. Yes, certainly, that's a great point. We want to ensure that our recommendations at the end also include layered recommendations. So not only for the study area boundaries, but also for if properties, for example, can't be included in the study area, but there's some significant value there. Maybe they're just outside, or maybe there are other properties we've encountered. We want to make sure that those properties we've flagged for the town, so the town can consider adding them to the register. So certainly that's part of our part of what we hope to put forward to council as well.
That's excellent. I'm really happy to hear that, and I just wanted to clarify that for sure. You know, adding properties to the registry is a huge process, and it's a big job when you're looking at the entire town. So at the Heritage Committee, a couple of recommendations were put forward, and one of them was to expand the boundary, and these boundaries are not set from what we're hearing in this report. So the Heritage Committee wanted to see the expansion to include past Albert Street, to include the two properties that we see noted on the map that are included in the registry. So that was one area, and the other area was to include quite a large portion of Hickson Street. And we're not seeing anything on the registry on Hickson Street, not because it's not there, it's just because that's an area that the Heritage Committee just has not been able to have the resources or the time or people to do that area. So that was put forward as well, because there's a lot of heritage properties and cultural heritage locations there. So just to clarify, Mr. Parsons, again, so those recommendations were received and will be added and changed moving forward?
Through you, Madam Chair. So, Councillor Timmers, can you clarify that one more time? I kind of missed what the question was.
Sure, fair enough. I kind of went into a little detail there, but the question was, the Heritage Committee wanted to see the boundary expanded to include Albert Street and also Hickson Street. So I'm just clarifying again and just putting it on the table again, so it's
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. That's correct. We've noted all the requests for boundary changes. So once we get our updated mapping with our GIS staff and working with the town to make sure that we're all on the same page, we're going to produce some updated mapping. I don't know if Mr. Bruder, the Director of Planning, wanted to add to that, because I know you've been maybe even involved more than me on these discussions, but that's my understanding. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Parsons. I'll turn now to Director Bruder. Go ahead, Director.
Thanks, Your Worship, and through you to the councillor. Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you saw in the work plan that was laid out, there's going to be opportunity for, additional consultations with the Heritage Committee, taking their input into account. Absolutely. It will be a little bit of balancing act between what actually gets included in this specific HCD, should we proceed completely down that road as a result of the study, and what might be a future recommendation. But I think those corridors that you mentioned are certainly ones that we can consider to include in a revised study area, perhaps.
Councillor Timmers, is that satisfactory?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Bruder.
Bruder. Thank you, Mr. Parsons. I have Councillor Reimer. Go ahead, Councillor. Oh, I'm sorry. I have Councillor Njima. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And through you, my question is about, so in the project memo on 4.1, item 4.1 of the project memo. It lists the outcomes of this project. And the final one is that there will be a recommendation for objectives of designations and recommendations toward the contents of the future HCD plan and guidelines. So I'm not sure what the scope of the project is. It sounds like the last item in the deliverables is a recommendation toward a future plan and related guidelines. Will we have a completed plan and guidelines at the end of 2023 under the scope of this project, or is that something beyond the scope of this project?
Through you, Councillor, through you, Madam Mayor, to the Councillor. It's a great question, and I apologize if the wording is a little confusing. It's actually pulled directly from the Ontario Heritage Act, so it is a little confusing. But the deliverable for this project is the Hcd study. So we're focused on the study, and we really can't move ahead to the plan until we've completed the study component. And once we've put those boundaries to council can then make a decision if it wants to move ahead with the actual designation and move ahead to the plan stage, or as is the case with some municipalities, after you do public consultation, you get a feel for how the community feels about certain things. And, there's some cases where during the study phase, maybe some public opinion shifts in certain ways and things could be delayed or changed. So we want to just make sure that we're focused on the study. We're focused on delivering council with a final study report, which includes, recommendations for a future plan, but doesn't include plan and guidelines, which is the next step after council's reviewed our study recommendations.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Maybe my question should go through to staff, so I'm just wondering if the budget for this project includes the final plan and the guidelines.
Okay, we're going to go to, thank you, Mr. Parsons.
Thank you.
Director Bruder, would you please respond?
Yep, through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. That's a good question for sure. It's, further to what Mr. Parsons was saying, we didn't want to put the cart too far before the horse. We got to make sure that we complete the study, in accordance with the requirements of the Heritage Act. And that's really the impetus of this. And that really constitutes a lot of the legwork in moving forward to the final steps. So there were budgetary considerations made for proceeding down those final steps. But again, there is a little bit of, definitive or to define what's actually included in those further steps after we get through the study. The study kind of informs to some extent how we proceed from there. So I can't say with absolute certainty, but we did include budgetary considerations for that, yes.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Bruder. All right, now I have, you'll just have to bear with me, councillors, because of of our technology issues, but I actually have Councillor Brunet next on the list. Go ahead, and then Councillor Mikulik. Go ahead, Councillor Brunet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Parsons. So, Jeremy, I'm just trying to understand the chart with the deliverables and the major project meeting. So, cognizant that we are in election year in October, I'm seeing a PIC tentatively scheduled for September 14th, and then it appears nothing for the balance of this year until 2023. I'm wondering if someone could comment on the reason for that 3-month delay. Can we not be meeting with staff during that period, or that's my initial question.
Mr. Parsons?
Yeah, that's a great question, through the chair. So we've had some discussions with Director Bruder and with the clerks, and it's our understanding that there's some complications around the election. So the intention is to kind of leave it open. We'll be working through that whole time, especially throughout the fall. That's when we'll be doing a lot of our writing and doing a lot of our analysis. So we'll be working, and we'll be in discussions with staff that whole time. We're in constant contact with planning staff, so we won't be delaying any of that. But I think the intention there is just to be cognizant of the election, that committees aren't meeting, and there's some hold in that area. So we're not exactly sure when we can meet with the committee of the whole again, or when we can meet with Heritage Committee again. We didn't want to put an exact date, so we kind of left those dates open.
Okay, so, Councillor, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for that answer. I anticipated that would be the response, but just wanted to put it out there for the public. Both Councillor Timmers and I, as members of the Heritage Committee, brought this motion forward, and we're grateful that it is moving along. But I guess through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Parsons, respectful that you've already mentioned you're following the guidelines of the Heritage Act. But again, when I look at the chart and I see the final deliverables, everything is 2023, but there are no dates in there. And I'm not trying to tie you down. But in a perfect world, when would you anticipate that final deliverables in 2023 might be forthcoming? Are we looking at spring of 2023? Or are we looking at fall of 2023? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Parsons?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. That's a great point and great question. We are looking at the spring of 2023 for the final deliverable. So we've tentatively said it would likely be April or May, and we've included that in a lot of our discussions with staff. But after discussing with clerks, it was determined that we didn't want to include any specific dates here because of the question mark around the election and committees not meeting. So we left that open.
That's great. And one final comment, not a question, Madam Mayor, but through you to Mr. Parsons. So couldn't agree more that the public consultation, the PICs, are very, very important. We are a municipality that makes up a number of towns, villages, and hamlets. So I would only put it out there. I'm seeing one PIC in September. I don't know if there's been any consideration to have multiple PICs over a period of time. And I realize this study is looking at an Hcd within a specific area in Beamsville, but when we first started talking about this, we were talking about all of Lincoln, including, Jordan or Vineland. So again, I don't know if there's a thought process that's been given to where the PICs, might occur, but I'm just putting it out there that it might be, quite often we have PICs, one in the east, one in the west. So just a comment, and I appreciate the presentation this evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Parsons?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. That's noted. We have, that's something we're considering. We're obviously dealing with, there's lots of constraints on the consultant end in some respects too, but the Public Information Center, we've toyed with the idea of having one central in-person open house, and then maybe looking at some other ways to consult with the public, maybe virtual means, in order to have it be kind of time sensitive. Think about time, but that's something we'll definitely take back and we'll consider whether there's any opportunity to do any further engagement with the public or any further PICs. That's something we'll certainly consider.
Mr. Parsons, I would just add as well that the culture of this community is such that consideration of additional PICs, whether the result is that we wouldn't be taking immediate action, but to have that information available and included in the first study would not be lost on the community or the council. And in fact, what's being invested here in terms of money and time and your expertise pretty much, I think, directs that level of consultation is required. So I hope that that you understand that very well. Thank you very much. I'll turn now to Councillor Mikulik. Go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you, Mayor Easton, through you to Jeremy. Jeremy, in looking at the survey area, the proposed Heritage District survey area, I see 4 designated properties and a number of properties on the inventory register. And with your experience in reviewing these sorts of maps, is that a large number? Is that a small number? What are the ratios tell you in looking at this map?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. It certainly is on the larger end, I would say, of HCD study areas. And I think part of the reason is it's such a geographically it is such a long stretch. So we're certainly in the hundreds, upwards of 200 plus properties that we're looking at right now. And that is, I would say that's certainly on the larger end, but don't forget, this is only the beginning. This is what we're starting with. And from there, we look at carving out something that's really forms more of an intact area with cultural heritage value that's intact. And so this is our starting point, and we're including a fair number of properties to start, but it'll likely by the end include something a little bit more manageable, a little bit more smaller or intact.
Thank you for that answer. Just the concern I have is that there may be folks that have their properties on a register, but don't necessarily want to be designated or have a heritage district. So if I may, another question. During the public consultation and the open houses and possibly the virtual, is it possible for us to mail specific letters to those that may be affected should this move forward in being designated a heritage conservation district?
Mr. Parsons, I'm going to, and Council, I'm going to turn to Mr. Bruder to have a reinforcement on the current policy that's in place. Mr. Bruder?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just to clarify on your first question, Councillor, yeah, that was one of the reasons why we chose this particular study area in which to start in the town, to kind of delve into it in a little more detail, just because of that, concentrated area of properties that are either designated or on the non-designated roster. So quite a lot in that study area. So to me, that validates the approach we're taking. But on the, and I'll let Jeremy chime in after me, but on the notification directly to the property owners impacted, I would say, yeah, that's absolutely something we look at doing, reaching out directly, mailing correspondence rather than just posting on social media and whatnot, because these are property owners, as you said, that could be, directly impacted. They need to know what's going on. We did the same for the Ontario Street Visioning study that we were working on. We distributed mail all along that corridor as well. So I would envision something similar here when we're dealing with property owner notification.
Okay,
Thank you very much. And if I may just provide a suggestion, when we are creating these mailers or we are creating this information, when I read slide 6, it's very detailed, it's very governmental. Is it possible to have the wording more in layman's terms of how, in such a way as like how this may affect you, as opposed to just detailing possibilities of what may happen should this area become a heritage conservation district? Is it, more of a layman's terms of how this may affect yourself? Like,
Councillor, are you referring to the slide that's entitled Enabling Heritage Legislation, Ontario Heritage Act?
correct.
Okay,
So,
I guess, well, that's what it is. It really is laying out the act.
but my concern is that if we present the information in this form, some members of the public may not quite understand what they're reading and what may occur with the passing of this sort of initiative. So
Okay.
Those are my, and with that correspondence. Thank you.
Okay, so you're looking for some interpretation.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much, Counselor. For the second time, I'm going to Counselor Njima. Go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So my question is along the veins of Councillor Mikulic's question. So it's about, let's say, so I had somebody ask me this question. If I had a property that abutted or was nearby a property that was proposed to be designated, let's say I wanted to do something on my property, wanted to develop it, build something. Can you describe a situation in which the fact that the property abutting or nearby my property is designated into the Heritage Act, what would I have to think about as a neighbor? How would it affect my proposed development? How would it affect what I wanted to do on my property?
Yeah, through the chair to the counselor. That's an excellent question. And also to the previous counselor, we've noted that in layman's terms, I think that's really helpful. I think sometimes we get bogged down in the details, and unfortunately, in terms of translating the information, sometimes it gets lost. So I think that's a really good point. So thank you for that. On the question of development, the way that it works with heritage conservation districts, the property has to be in the district. So if the property is adjacent to the district, it would be outside of the heritage permit process. If it's just an undesignated, unregistered property that happens to be next door to a district, it wouldn't be regulated. If it's in the district and new development is proposed, the simplest way of explaining it is basically the district plan and the guidelines, they guide what development will look like. So those guidelines can be as detailed or as vague or undetailed as the town wishes. If there are some districts where paint is regulated, there are some districts where very, very minimal regulations are in place, and only certain things are regulated. So I would say most districts, this is the way that it works. Development that affects the public realm is considered, and generally that's where if you wanted to build something, let's say a large addition on the front of your home, the process would be you'd apply to the town for a heritage permit. You'd go to the committee, discuss with the committee. If the committee has no issues, the town has no issues, you'd be issued the heritage permit and you could apply for your building permit, or if needed, your Planning Act application, and you could build. But the public realm is kind of the main kind of piece that we look at. So by that I mean if you're building something outside of the public realm, let's say it's in the backyard, it's obscured, you can't see it if you walk by. Generally, districts don't regulate that. So I think that's a great thing, because that allows you for homeowners to build creatively, to do what they need to do on their properties. But the intent is to preserve the character of that district and what you see on the street. So again, it's the public realm. It's what you see when you engage, when you walk along the street. Generally, changes to that area are what require heritage permits. Changes that aren't visible or aren't within the public realm are not regulated. So you wouldn't have to get a heritage permit. For example, if you put in a deck behind your house, that's generally how it's approached.
Okay, I don't want to get into too much detail. And so I'm going to ask you, Mr. Parsons, because this is an important discussion that will take place at different points. When will the thrust of the discussion and when will these kinds of questions be best tabled for both the public and council? How much more information would we expect to have in front of us to start asking detailed questions like that? Would it happen at public meetings? Is that where individual homeowners would ask those questions? Would they have private meetings? When would you see that happening?
So certainly, these are the types of discussions that are typically held throughout the study process. So at public open houses, this kind of question is very common. And so that's when a lot of that discussion would happen. But in a sense, it's a little premature because we are still at the study phase. So we're still sort of studying this area to determine if it's a significant candidate for a district, and and secondarily, what the proposed boundaries are for that district. So the next step after we get through the study phase, if council is supportive of moving forward, is the plan and the guidelines. And once we get to the plan and the guidelines stage, that's where these kind of granular discussions on development or window treatment or those kinds of specific property development questions are typically addressed, because the study itself will not speak to what you can do with your property. That's for the plan and guidelines. That's for the next stage in the process.
Okay, that's very helpful. Does that help you, Councillor Majima?
Yeah, I think I may not have asked the question properly, so I understand how the detail came out. My question was really more, and this will be fleshed out eventually through the process also, but people outside but abutting the Heritage District, how will this affect their properties? Because they're going to have those questions as they're going through. If they're just backing onto a property that's a Heritage District, that's within the Heritage District, and they want to develop their property, do they have to do a heritage impact assessment? I guess those are the kinds of things that will get fleshed out through this process. Through you, Madam Mayor.
Is that correct, Mr. Parsons?
Yes, through the chair. That's correct. So if property is outside of the district, it's not subject to any of the guidelines within the district. It's outside of the district. Now, that being said, if it's directly abutting a significant property in the district, the town may have other policies in their official plan or in their urban design guidelines that kind of speak to best practices. And so, if they have to come in for a Planning Act application and they're building a tower right next to the district, it's certainly some things the town may want to consider. But the actual policies are only specific to the district.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. I don't have any other questions. I don't see anyone on the board. I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers and seconded by Councillor Brunet. The council receive and file for information the presentation from Jeremy Parsons, ACOM, regarding introductory overview of the Downtown Beamsville Heritage Conservation District Study. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
The vote is now open. Councillor Patriva, may I have your vote verbally, please? Oh, got it. Councillor Reimer?
Yes.
Thank you, and I'll be closing the vote. And that carries. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion is carried. And now I would like the Deputy Mayor to move that we take a 10-minute recess. It's been requested that we take a photograph with the members of Community Care of West Niagara and the council, and we'll come back at 7:23 approximately. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. We're now resuming the meeting. Thank you, everyone. And we're on item number 12, which is recommendations for standing committees. We're now considering the following: the Committee of the Whole meeting, the whole workshop minutes of July the 20th, 2022, and Committee of the Whole minutes of July 25th, 2022. Do members of council have any questions? Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And not a question, but I do have a comment to make about the Committee of the Whole minutes of July 25th, 2022.
Yes, do you have a? Is there
I
a
have the
particular-
item number 12.2. Sorry, let me pull that up. It is the item that deals with the delegation of authority.
That's PD 37-22.
Okay.
Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as is indicated in the minutes, I was not in attendance that night, and that being the case, I wanted to just share some comments publicly. So back to the July 11th public meeting, I commented that during that meeting that I felt strongly that the passing of bylaws is a council responsibility. I really feel that is one of our core responsibilities is passing bylaws, whether they be major or minor in nature. I also felt that, and let me also say that this is absolutely no disrespect to the staff, that we have a very capable and qualified staff, and this simply is my feeling that this is a core responsibility of council. I also wanted to mention that that as I said in the July 11th meeting, I see that Bill 13 is really being brought forward for municipalities that are struggling to move through efficiently on their development applications. And I do not see us being one of those municipalities. I think we move through very, very nicely, and we have an expediency to our development applications. So for those reasons, when the bylaw comes forward later in the meeting, I will be voting against the bylaw. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. All right. Okay. Do members of council, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. I was gonna bring these concerns up at the time of the bylaw itself, but I may as well bring it up now. In looking at that same report, I was unable to be at that meeting, and fortunately, we have this opportunity to review this again. A concern I have is, and if I can ask this question through you to our Director of Planning, is by delegating this authority, like what conditions, have we imposed any conditions as a council on what can be done or what can't be done, or like, is there any conditions that we've created with this to alleviate some concerns that councilors may or may not have?
I think, Councillor, I'm going to go first to Mr. Kirkopoulos, because just in light of the earlier question as well, to clarify some of the foundational pieces that relate to this decision, and then I'll turn to Mr. Bruder at that time. Mr. Kirkopoulos?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. Councillor, I think, one of the things that really was the topic of discussion when this was discussed on the 25th was what the reporting back would look like. I think if I recall some of the comments that I heard on July 11th, it was really around what sort of reporting back does council have and where are council's inputs. We spent a lot of time on the 25th actually talking about those two items, and Director Bruder can take you through them in greater detail. Staff did confirm and I think answered a number of questions where we suggested and indicated we would be coming back on regular intervals, sharing information on what was approved and not approved. And we also indicated that should anything be of a serious nature, should anything be of a nature that we think is contentious, like we do now, we would make every effort to inform council. We're a communicative team, I think, as you indicated. I know Director Bruder took you through a lot of the details around the bill and around the delegated authority report, up to and including the ability for council, should you not like any decisions and should you find yourselves concerned with some of the decisions, that you're able to revoke it. So, I mean, that was really the significant part of the conversation. We also spoke about providing council a little bit of a flow chart in terms of where council has input. You'll probably be seeing whatever report, public delegation 2 or 3 times before we even get to a point where council's making a decision and passing any sort of bylaw relative to the delegated authority. So we also spent considerable time at that meeting going through, I think, a number of illustrative examples on where council has input at the beginning, at the public meeting, as an opportunity to share and have input and change recommendations in terms of providing direction and so forth when we come forward. This was just that final point. Once we've incorporated all that, once we have an approval in place and have a report, that at the end of all of that, we're not coming back with a subsequent report reiterating what's in previous reports. But Madam Mayor, I think Director Bruder can maybe share a little bit of the illustrative examples he had on that evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kokopoulos. Director Bruder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I think it's an important thing to kind of zero in on a little bit is, about when council does have input. A lot of these things, when I look at things like holding provisions, that's always brought forward as part of a larger public process, in many cases, say a zoning bylaw amendment. So, council would have had input into forming, those provisions, how they're brought forward. But really, when it comes to how they're satisfied, a lot of those are very technical in nature. It's something that, in most cases, either a prospective developer meets or doesn't meet. Another important one to consider are temporary uses, garden suites. We've talked a little bit about those in the past, Councillor. And, these are things that we're moving forward with in providing a new and established framework that is approved by council. An important clarification got brought up at that committee meeting, which was, as a result of all this, staff aren't creating new policy. We're simply adhering to what's there and what's been put forth and approved by council already. Another good example, I think there was a good clarification around what happens for, say, a condition of consent. You've got a condition of consent for a land severance, but there's also going to be a subsequent subdivision application on that land. Well, that doesn't mean that subdivision application isn't part of a public process. It's just that, fulfilling the conditions of the consent just for the land severance are things that we look at, not necessarily, another planning application. That process still needs to be followed. So again, it's not really about, diminishing council's role in decision-making in any way. It's just realizing that a lot of these processes are A, very technical in nature, or B, they've already been through some type of approval process to begin with, and moving forward just to try to streamline that aspect in realizing that.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Mikulik?
Thank you very much. It's just the concern I have is just defining minor in nature and, like being clear. And when I look at the amendment itself, I don't see a condition, or I don't see it outlined or detailed where there will be that, especially within wards, ward councillors, like knowing details of, either applications, developers kicking the can, or so to say, or developments that have passed. And I just want to make sure that council or members of council, especially within their wards, are privy to information prior to it being passed all of a sudden. And I just want to make sure that that occurs, because I don't see it formally written in the amendment itself as a condition.
Mr. Bruder, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just quickly, Your Worship. That is something that, I know it might not necessarily be written in anything there, but certainly a takeaway that staff had, something that we committed to verbally too at the last committee meeting. I think, there is an opportunity, even if some of these items are delegated, doesn't mean we can't share them with council. To your point, Councillor, I think it's good for you to know in certain instances. I wouldn't necessarily, I think there's some level of discretion there. Some applications can be very, very simple in nature. Some, don't really require too much additional consideration, but certainly something that we're taking away. Perhaps it's something we bring forward, in your council correspondence packages or things like that, just to make sure you're aware of some of these things, even though they might not necessarily come across for formal approval. So definitely point well taken. And although maybe it's not written down, I'm certainly committed to addressing that.
Thank you very much. And just one more question, if I may. With this passing of a delegation of authority and the decision-making that falls on your staff, would council be able to access that information readily? The process, the decision, the details. If a resident was to ask myself, hey, what's going on with, how did this happen? Would I be able to readily access that through your office, or would I have to make a Freedom of Information Act or a request or something of that nature? How easy would it be for me as a councillor to access that information, the details of the arrangement, the agreement that would be made on our behalf as council?
Mr. Bruder, it's my understanding that we did talk about having regular reporting. Maybe I will turn to Mr. Kirkopoulos to have him clarify that further.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Absolutely, we did talk about it. That is one of the things staff confirmed. I don't think we landed on, is that happening on a quarterly basis, a biannual basis, or even every 2 months. I think we can bring something back to council. At the end of the day, any member of council can ask a question of staff, and we will provide that information. Let me say that before I say we're going to bring it back every 2 months or every 4 months. That has always been my policy. It's always been the policy of this entire senior leadership team. So I would encourage, if councillors get resident requests, absolutely, Councillor Mikulik, flow them through the appropriate staff, and we will answer those questions. By no means would I ever suggest the council needs to file an FOI to get information from staff in any way. So first and foremost, ask us if you have any questions. We'll supply that information, and you can answer the question to your constituent. But from a more formal reporting process, definitely something that we will be doing. And I think we can talk as staff between the clerk, Director Bruder, and I about what is the appropriate frequency with which to come back.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that we as council don't, or myself as a councillor, have to make a motion to request a report or to request information or to request, and again, like, it's just a new area of, new area for myself as a councillor in providing this delegation of authority. I just want to be satisfied for myself that I still have that ability to get into the details should I wish to, or anybody I represent. Thank you.
I think
Absolutely.
that's pretty clear. Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Kirkopoulos. Mr. Bruder, I don't see any other questions. I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Russell. The council approve the following recommendations from Standing Committee. Committee of the Whole Workshop Minutes of July 20th, 2022. Committee of the Whole Minutes of July 25th, 2022. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
The vote is now open.
Yes.
Thank you. And the vote is closed. That vote carries.
The motion is carried. We move on now to item 13, the notice of motion, and we do not have any this evening. Item 14 is report of municipal officers, and we're now considering item 14.1, memorandum dated July 25th, 2022, from the Legislative Committee Coordinator and Manager of Legislative Services Deputy Clerk regarding approval of remaining advisory committee minutes. Do members have any questions? I am seeing none. I have a motion moved by Councillor Renchima, seconded by Councillor Reimer. Receive and file for information the memorandum dated July 25th, 2022, and that council approve the advisory committee minutes contained within, and they be adopted as recommended. I will now ask the clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Mary Easton. The vote is now open. And I'm closing the vote, and that carries.
The motion is carried. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're now considering item 14.3, the Regional Councillor Update. Councillor Foster is in chambers this evening. Please come to the podium, Councillor Foster. Okay, well, that's fine. I will speak after you.
We got, okay.
I somehow don't read the bottom of the page for some reason.
Well,
Go ahead, Councillor.
We've been doing this for what, almost 4 years now, and you've always spoke ahead of me, so we'll call this a unique situation tonight. First of all, good evening, Council, and it's really good to see all of you. It's quite a bit different actually being in person. I'm sorry that Councillor Pachariv and Russell are not here, but you know, I understand Councillor Russell has been a little under the weather, so I hope you're feeling much better, Adam, as well. So tonight I wanted to talk about a few different things, and I do apologize. I didn't send a letter ahead of time, but hopefully nothing is going to be too terribly controversial. So the first thing I did want to talk about is Canada Games and the fact that we are going into that this upcoming weekend. The town has an incredibly well-organized event coming up. I do hope all of you are going to be participating in that this upcoming weekend. I have been for the last, I guess, 2.5, 3 years almost, I have been the Game Services Chair for technology, speaking of technology and the issues that come along with it at times. We're in the process right now of running essentially wireless and cable into all of the differing sites. The Canada Games is a bit unique this time here in Niagara. We have 18 different venues that are going on, and that is extremely unique. Usually with Canada Games, there is one central core that goes on with the games itself. So a particular municipality, and it's all within a fairly contained environment. This one is quite a bit different. So we're running things all over the place, and so my technology leads have all been talking to me. I got about 5 or 6 different emails during this discussion as well, and but it's all going to work out really well. The Canada Games is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us here in Niagara, and as I said, if you haven't got tickets, please get them. If you are interested in doing any volunteer work, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it as well. There are some volunteer positions that are still available if people are interested. And I'll just get back my notes. We have corporate services coming up in the next week or so at Niagara Region. As you guys know, I have been chairing corporate services from the beginning of this term. I gotta say, it's been a really good position to be involved with at Niagara Region. We have information coming in on industrial development charges. There's going to be a fairly significant discussion going on that this upcoming committee meeting. And where that's coming into play, there has always been essentially in and across most municipalities in Niagara the opportunity to have essentially zero when it comes to development charges in many industrial application situations. We have been looking at doing some significant changes to the way DC charges are being charged throughout Niagara, and we have changed it around so that it is going to be having much more of a community improvement program / granting piece of the puzzle that is coming into play. But as with everything, sometimes one model does not fit all. So I think there's going to be an extremely good discussion at the next Corporate Services Committee on specific problems being seen within the industrial side of things with development charges. And for those of you that follow the industries themselves, we have been very much into just-in-time parts processing. The problem is with COVID and with the problems with supply chain, many of our businesses have essentially had a big problem in that area, and now they're having to actually get their parts when they can get their parts. And this is creating inventory problems for them on the front end as opposed to inventorying on the back end. So it's going to make a very interesting discussion. I'm quite looking forward to that. SWIFT. So many of you have seen throughout Niagara here, the SWIFT is going into the ground in a number of areas. We have some going in here in the Beamsville area. Essentially, the industrial area north of the tracks, there's also some that is going into play south of the tracks and in and across. Bell is putting that in. And the good thing about Bell is that they've actually continued throughout the subdivisions in the Beamsville area and are laying out new fiber in and through much of the rest of those subdivisions that are just off from there. And that was one of the big reasons why SWIFT came into play in the first place. It provided an incentive for businesses to go, such as Bell, such as Rogers, such as all of the rest of them that have applied and got money for this. But the expectation is they're going to go one step further, and they're going to be putting in place fiber throughout the community when they have an opportunity to do it. So that's a good news story. Your staff here at the town has been very good at going after other funding opportunities within the internet field. The province itself has a program that they are now finalizing that is also going to be delivering internet in and through the remainder of the areas that essentially are still having problems. So, and I know Councillor Timmers and I have talked about this a few times. Anyway, long story short with that one, they are going to be rolling this out, and I would suggest to you that over the course of the next few weeks you're going to be hearing announcements out of the province on these types of things. And finally, I just wanted to briefly talk about AMO. I'm assuming, as is normally the case, many of you are going to the AMO conference. This is going to be the first time we have been in person for quite some time. A new government in place. It's going to be interesting talking to the ministers and reiterating the important things that we have here in our area. North-south escarpment crossing, many of the pieces of the puzzle in and around agriculture, you know, that continuing discussion on healthcare that we have throughout our area, and particularly, you know, the support that we have done with the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital. So anyway, I'm very much looking forward to it. I am back on the board of AMO. I put in my name to run again, but there wasn't an election. There was just enough people to go and fill the position. So, I am back, and assuming I get reelected in the next election, I will be on the AMO board for another 2 years. So, and that's my report for this evening, Madam Mayor. And if there's any questions, be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Any questions? Councillors?
Except for Councillor Timmers, I don't want.
You don't want her to ask?
No, no.
I'm sure she'll agree to that. Where's my fiber? I don't see any questions.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Well, great. Thank you very much. Have a great meeting.
last couple of weeks since, well, actually since July the 11th. Here we are on the 2nd of August already. July 11th was our last council meeting, and on July 12th, Councillor Foster and I met in his role as the chair of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Association, and with staff to talk about Cave Springs and the enhancements that are going to take place there on the trailhead and some upgrades to the home of Margaret Reed, who was the custodian there informally and formally for quite a number of years. And that was it was a great meeting, and it provided us also, the CEO, Kirkopoulos, joined me at that meeting. It also provided us with an opportunity to discuss some of the other areas where we share an interest and where we intend to be working together in the future. Certainly activities around the watershed, activities around the geopark, all of these matters are very important, and there is definitely a shared interest. The July 21st brought us to Prudham's after all of these years, and the groundbreaking for the commercial area of that property. But it also provided council with a great opportunity to walk the property. Besides the groundbreaking, we were able to walk the property and see how the park was laid out, where the foreshore is, and what those parcels of land look like. That was very helpful. It really was quite a celebration, and I think it's great to know that this is now moving forward. There's certainly work to be done on the site plan, but the project is moving forward in the commercial areas. On July 24th, we celebrated with the Canada Games Torch Relay, and Councillors Timmers attended, and Deputy Mayor Greg Reimer attended. And it was actually quite a bit of fun, and not only that, but traveling in the bus behind the runners provided us with an opportunity to see what other people see when they come into our community. We were really on the back roads, and people were coming out from their houses and joining in, which was quite exciting. But the town couldn't have looked better, even with all the sunshine and all the heat that we've had. The fields and everything just looked absolutely wonderful, and there were a lot of excellent comments. It was a wonderful day. It was the period of committees at the region and at the town, so we certainly had our share of committees and committees of the whole to attend. July 19th, we had, I think this was the third truck safety, but this was a truck safety and excessive noise blitz. Again, a partnership with the town, the MTO, Niagara Regional Police, the OPP. And there were certainly, there was a good write-up. It was well publicized in the paper. And I think that we can continue to understand and feel concerned about the safety in our community. It seems that every time we have one of these, the results are even more disturbing. Maybe the message will come across sooner than later. Certainly the delays that people must be feeling, as well as the fines and the lost time when their vehicles are being taken off the road, that has to hit home at some point in time. And August the 6th is the 13 for 13. It's actually written up in the Grimsby Lincoln News. It's the headline here was "Yes by Lincoln to celebrate the East Coast." So it's part of the Niagara 2022 Canada Summer Games. We're up as #1, and certainly looking forward to anybody with that maritime spirit. And if it's in their, maybe it's in their hearts, maybe it's part of their family history. This is going to be a great celebration. And I've been spending a bit of time listening to some of the groups that are going to be coming. The music, it's just incredible. I can't believe the quality of what's going to be there. So I certainly hope that everybody that's paying attention here looks up, does some YouTube searches on for Addercliff and the Pillow Talkers and Jack Van Ginger and Ladylike and Shanneyganock. They're all just absolutely fabulous, and it's going to be lots and lots of fun. So it starts at 12:30, and I don't know when it's going to end. Maybe it's just going to go on until everybody's tired and can't stand up anymore. I don't know. Anyway, it's going to be great, and I just have to say that, you know, I think our policy development over the last 7 to 8 years in the areas that provide such value to our community in the agricultural area, but also how it all ties into tourism. It's just become a wonderful platform, and many mechanisms are already in place. I think myself that is what made it possible to pull together the quality of programming that is going to be showcased in Lincoln as we welcome Newfoundland and Labrador, and thank them and their tourism entities very, very much for their contributions to this great day and great evening. We're really looking forward to you to coming soon. So that's the end of my report this evening. And we'll move on now to a motion by Councillor Pachariva and seconded by Councillor McPherson that Council receive and file as information the following Mayor's Report and Regional Councillor Update. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
Vote is now open. And I'm closing the vote, and that carries.
Thank you. The motion is carried. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to consider item 15, which is a motion to consider confidential items. So I have a little bit of information to read to you before we move into a closed session. First, there will be a closed session statement that the clerk will go through for staff that will be attending the closed session remotely. And once that is completed, we will move on with the motion to move into closed session. The clerk will be turning off the live webcast during the closed portion of the meeting. Once we have completed the closed portion of the meeting, we will resume with the live webcast and carry on with the public portion of the meeting, and we'll read the motions from the closed session. I'll now ask the clerk to conduct the closed session statement for all of council and others attending the closed session remotely. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. All members are reminded that any discussions in closed session are to remain confidential as per our procedural bylaw and our code of conduct for the Council of the Town of Lincoln. Before we begin, I need each member that is attending electronically to confirm the following: that you understand that matters are to remain confidential, and confirm that no one else is present with you, confirm that no one can hear this closed session, and confirm that you're not using any electronic devices other than your tablet, computer, or telephone for the video conferencing, and confirm that you are not recording this portion of the meeting. If you acknowledge all of the above statements, please reply with, "I understand," and confirm to all of the statements as I read your name aloud. Councillor Pachariva.
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Councillor Russell.
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Our CAO, Mike Kirkopoulos.
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Director of Planning and Development, Matt Bruder.
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Our Director of Special Projects, Kathleen Dale.
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Director of Economic Development and Communications, Paul Deaney.
I understand and confirm to all the statements.
And our legal counsel from Aaron Bearless, Tom Helinski.
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
The council adjourned to closed session in order to address item 15.1 as follows. Item 15.1, pursuant to section 239E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. And pursuant to section 239F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
And the vote is now open. Councillor Timmers? One moment. Pardon me?
We didn't declare.
Do you need to declare?
Well, we didn't verbally. Understand and confirm to all the statements.
No, no, it's for those electronically. It's not for those in the room. It's for those electronically, as though we cannot.
We don't do.
You don't need to.
This is a controlled environment. They are an uncontrolled environment.
So Councillor Timmers, can you cast your vote, please?
Yes, I have a couple of times, I guess it's not.
Okay. And the vote is now closing. And that carries.
Thank you. The motion has carried, and Madam Clerk, would you please proceed with the technical requirements to move into closed session? thank you very much. I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson and seconded by Councillor Brunet that council resume an open session. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. The vote is now open. And I will close the vote. And that carries.
All right, the motion is carried, and now we move on, and I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariva and seconded by Councillor Reimer, that council receive and file the confidential updates, and that staff move forward as directed in closed session as it relates to item 15.1 pursuant to section 239E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and pursuant to section 239F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
That vote is open. Councillor Reimer?
Yes.
Thank you. And that carries.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Helinski. We're at item number 16, a motion to approve bylaws, and we have 6 bylaws for consideration today. We'll be considering bylaws 2022-54, -55, -56, and -57 separately due to the declared conflict by Councillor Reimer. Do members have any questions? I have a motion moved by Councillor Mikulik and seconded by Councillor Reimer that leave be given to approve the following bylaws. 2022-52, bylaw to authorize the execution of a site plan agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Lincoln and 1254349 Ontario, Inc., together with any and all mortgagees that may be on title at the point of registration of the agreement. 2022-53, a bylaw to adopt amendment number 12 to the official plan for the Town of Lincoln. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
I have a question, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor McPherson.
Are we not looking at these individually,
Well, this,
2022-52 and 2022-53 individually?
well, the way they're written on my paper there.
We can certainly do that.
Can we
As
do
I
that?
remember, Councillor
Is that your
McPherson did
wish?
say that he wanted to vote in the negative for that particular item. So we
we'll
can
deal-
certainly do that.
We'll
Thank
deal
you.
with, okay, we'll deal with, this will be moved by Councillor Mikulik, seconded by Councillor Reimer, then we'll get another set for the next group. So this is 2022-52. Madam Clerk, would you open the vote?
Can you just remind me who's moving this, please?
We already have it moved by Councillor Mikulik and seconded by Councillor Reimer.
And thank you. That's, the vote is now open. And I'll be closing that vote. And that carries.
Okay, thank you. And on the bylaw 2022-53, Councillor Russell, would you move that motion? Thank you. And Councillor Timmers, would you second that motion? Thank you. 2022-53, bylaw to adopt amendment number 12 to the official plan for the Town of Lincoln. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
And the vote is now open. And I'll be closing that vote. And that carries 8 in favor, 1 negative.
Thank you. The motion is carried. We now move to a motion moved by Councillor McPherson and seconded by Councillor Pachariva, that leave be given to approve the following bylaws. 2022-54, bylaw to stop up and close part of the unopened road allowance between concession 4 and 5, lot 9 in the former township of Clinton, now in the town of Lincoln, municipality of Niagara. 2022-55, bylaw to authorize the conveyance of part of the unopened road allowance between concession 4 and 5, lot 9 in the former township of Clinton, now in the town of Lincoln, municipality of Niagara. 2022-56, bylaw to stop up and close part of the unopened road allowance between concession 4 and 5, lot 10 in the former township of Clinton, now in the town of Lincoln, municipality of Niagara. 2022-57, bylaw to authorize the conveyance of part of the unopened road allowance between concession 4 and 5, lot 10 in the former township of Clinton, now in the town of Lincoln, municipality of Niagara. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
The vote is now open. Closing the vote. And that carries.
Thank you. The motion is carried. We move on now to item 17, a motion to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting. We will now confirm the proceedings of the council meeting. I have a motion moved by Councillor Brunet and seconded by Councillor Timmers, that leave be given to introduce bylaw number 2022-58, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022, being read a first, second, and third time. That bylaw number 2022-58 be enacted and passed, and that the mayor and clerk sign and seal the said bylaw. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
Vote is now open. Closing the vote, and that carries.
The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Reimer. No, I'm going, I need to go back up. Before we motion to adjourn the meeting, do members have any comments? Any comments? Councillor McPherson?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I don't see any hands on the screen. All right, thank you very much. I have a motion moved by Councillor Reimer and seconded by Councillor Regima, that the council meeting on August the 2nd be adjourned at 21:25 hours. And I'll ask the clerk to open the vote.
Vote is open. Closing the vote, and that carries.
Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you to everyone. Meeting is adjourned. Thanks for everyone for joining us. Thanks, staff.